I am recording. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody who is interested in learning Python, you wonderful, wonderful people. All right. So I'm just going to talk about getting started with Python, sort of the similarities and differences between Python and Node. And it's going to be just a big open discussion. So if people have questions, please ask. So the first thing I want to do is, okay, so I made a Python project, and I'm just going to call it Python 1 since I'm going to do a series of 4 of these. And if you were starting a Node project, what would you do? npm init. With Python, it's a little bit different. Instead, what you do is you do virtualenv. And so virtualenv is the equivalent of starting a project. So I'm going to do a virtualenv, and I'm going to just, it's conventional to name the virtualenv env or venv for virtualenv. And for people who work with Python a lot, they actually have virtualenv managers. That's what I use when I'm actually doing Python stuff. And what this is doing is this is making a completely separate version of Python in the env directory. So now if I do a which Python, oh no, actually, all right, so this is a little difference between the npm init and the virtualenv, and that is I'm not actually inside my project unless I do a source env bin activate. Now I'm inside my project, and I can tell because of this env in my prompt. So now if I do a which Python, notice it is not using a system Python. It's using the Python that is in my virtualenv directory. And if I get out of the virtualenv by deactivating, and now if I do a which Python, it's my system Python. Yeah, Dev.
Can you install virtualenv?
Yeah, so you can install virtualenv. You can do it using pip. And I'll talk about pip in a minute. If you're going to be installing it globally, which you have to if you don't have virtualenv, you would do a sudo install virtualenv. People are welcome to try and follow along with me. I'm not going to wait a lot for people to keep up. Yeah, I would prefer for people to ask me questions later. I think the flow is better if we can just move at my pace. Okay. So now I'm outside the virtualenv. So pip is the equivalent of npm. Pip installs modules. And if I do a pip install from out here, that is the same as doing it globally. That's the same as doing a -g on npm. The default is to do it globally. And because I often mistakenly install when I'm outside a virtual environment, there's actually a setting that you can do, and you can Google this, I don't know it off the top of my head, where it won't allow you to install things unless you're in a virtual environment, which almost, 99.9% of the time is what you want. Okay, so I get back into my virtual environment by sourcing and bin activate. Okay, so here I am, I'm in my virtual environment, and I have this env directory. This env directory is like node modules where you don't commit it to Git. If I want to pip install something, like let's say I want to pip install Flask, which is the equivalent of Express. Now I'm inside my virtual environment, so it'll be installing inside my virtual environment. And so it collects Flask, and including things like it's dangerous, which always cracks me up. And Jinja is the templating. We'll get into more of that probably in future sessions. Today is not going to be so involved with that. But so now if I do a pip freeze, there is no equivalent to package.json. at least not that I know about. But pip freeze will give you your whatever's installed in your virtual environment. And so instead of using the package.json, that's how you communicate with other people, because remember, you don't put the env in Git. That's just a bunch of files that are easily recreated by people. Instead, you just do a pip freeze and you redirect it to a file called requirements.txt, just conventional, and that you commit. And then people can install from requirements.txt. So right now, if I had forked this or cloned this, I would not have the env, right? So now if I want to recreate the environment, I always do that. I like remove env without deactivating. So let's just deactivate, get out of there quietly. And so now I'm going to make a new virtual env here. And then to install everything that was installed for the project, I just do pip install -r for read from file requirements.txt. Why did I get all of those horrible red permissions errors?
You weren't in the virtual environment.
I was not in the virtual environment. Like, I do it all the time. So most systems don't really allow you to install much globally with pip. Okay. All right. So now I'm here. Fine. Another thing that I want to install, which if you're playing around with Python at all, I would highly recommend installing, is IPython. So I'm going to pip install IPython. Python has a REPL, just like Node does. And it's just called Python. So I could go into Python like this, and I'm in the REPL, and I could, just say a equals 5, fine, and I print a. This REPL is not the best thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it gets much better if you IPython, which you have to pip install first. IPython gives you line numbers, and it also gives you, well, I mean, I have a tiny bit of syntax highlighting here, but it'll give you syntax highlighting as well. It also does things like, if I do a dot, oh, look what I can do with a. I did a dot and I did tab, right? And so I could do a dot real. Oh, a dot real. So I think that's if you have imaginary numbers. The real part of a is 5. I can do a, oh yeah, an a dot imaginary there too. I wonder what conjugate is. It's a function, so I can run it. Oh, well, it conjugates to 5. Nice to know. Okay, so while we're in here, I want to do an import this. So import is the equivalent of require. And actually more modern versions of Python use import also. And the reason I want to do an import this, it's a little bit of an Easter egg in Python, and it's the Zen of Python. Tim Peters is one of the core contributors of Python. And I don't need to go through all of these, but this is, people follow this when they are writing Python modules or writing for core Python, or even just writing Python in general. Readability counts. That's something that is very, very true in Python and not always true in JavaScript. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way to do it. It's a really nice thing about Python. If you know how to do it, that's how everybody's going to do it. There aren't a lot of different ways to do the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, those are my two favorites. But there's also, Errors should never pass silently. I have to say, I am a big fan of Python. Which one? Which one, Misha?
Never pass silently.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Python tracebacks. When I first started using Node, Node often wouldn't tell you which line in your file caused the problem. Python always does. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about Python data types. So simple Boolean. Oh, notice that when I am making these variables, this is not, in JavaScript, you probably always feel a little dirty if you create a variable without like a const or a let or a var in front of it. There's no such thing in Python. You just make your variables. So true and false are the keywords, and they are capitalized. So if I say bool equals true, I'm going to get an error, true is not defined. Let's see. So we have Booleans. There's a difference between integers. Oh, and actually this bool, notice how this is green. That's a keyword that I should not have used. So I'll say bool var. Snake case is the convention for variable names, not camel case. And you do a type. It's an int. It is not a number. There's a difference between ints and floats. I believe it's floats. We can check. Yeah, floats. Okay. But it's definitely dynamically typed. So if I say float var equals duck, no problem. Now, if I do the type, it's a string. Okay. Python does not have arrays. It has lists. So and then it does not have objects. It has dictionaries. So and you have to put quotes around your keys, but your keys can be things other than strings. So I can say and then I can give a key that is an actual number, and that's different from the string. But the keys have to be immutable. And this is something that if you don't know mutable, immutable, I'm not going to get too much into it now. But so this works, but lists are mutable. So this will not work. I can't do that. I can't use a list as a key. Subtle. Okay. Right. So those are the basic types. So we've got lists, we've got dictionaries, we've got strings, we've got floats, ints, and Booleans. As far as control structures go, this is where Python's readability really comes in. So I'm going to make an animals list. And I can just say for animal in animals, print animal. The colon is required, and so is the white space before print animal. That white space is part of the syntax. If I try to do this without that white space, it is a syntax error. That is how that's how I determine where my blocks begin and end. Similar for if. if duck in animals, that's how you determine whether something's in a list. If duck in animals, print, yay, found duck. Else, print, nope, no ducks. No parentheses. It is JavaScript is very punctuation heavy compared to Python.
This looks like straight English.
Yeah. 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 Python is it's a very friendly language. Another thing about Python that is different from JavaScript is Python is much less forgiving than JavaScript. But in a lot of ways, this is good. So let's look at nums for animals. If I want to say animals at 6, what would JavaScript do here?
Yeah.
Python throws an error.
Because you don't have it.
Because
like,
there is no 6th element in animals.
So it doesn't like have any placeholder or anything like that. It's like it is what it is or it isn't. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Yeah. And you know, additionally, if I try and say animal 6 equals cat, yeah, no, you can't do that.
It has to stay in order.
Yeah, it has to stay in order. So there is a try catch. Sorry if I cleared that before people had really taken it in. There is a try catch, which is similar to JavaScript's try catch. I don't know which came first, but I'm just going to say Python's. So I can say try and, oh no, so right now I'm like sort of, I'm in between languages. So it actually isn't try catch, it's try except. And I can say if I want, so notice when I did that, it threw an index error. So I can say except index error. If I get an index error, right, and then you can do except for a lot of other things, but then you can do sort of an except here being like, and I wish I knew how to put that shruggy thing in there, but I just imagine it's there. Okay. So now I can do it without getting an error if that's something that I really want to do. It's just not something that you really do in Python. It's access things that are out of range, but okay, yeah.
You had done animals index 4, I think, because you have what, like 3 in the array? Yeah. So is that something that does work if it's...
Oops.
Thank you. That was one of my questions. I just wanted to see.
Oh. And I am in Python too. There's a difference. The reason I was doing print is because eventually I'll do one that works, just so. But yeah, no 4. But if I do 2, then that'll work.
But now index 2 has changed from its old value to...
It hasn't because I just printed it. Yeah, yeah.
So you can't create a new value then?
I can. You can. Lists are mutable. So if I wanted to add a new value to animals, I could say animals.append. You can only add to the end. You can't add beyond the end because that's just crazy talk, right? That's JavaScript.
So you have to use the append method. You can't give it like
you can't tell it. You can't give it. Well, No, no. It's just, if you say animals for equals, you're saying, I want the thing at the fourth index to be replaced by whatever I'm giving you. And there is nothing at the fourth index. So, sorry.
Oh, can you show us that change? So right where you were and just put, I guess, an index instead of index 4, put index 3. Right. And then just change the animal. I just want to see.
But it changed the position of monkey when you changed it?
Nope, it's at 3. It's 0 indexed. 0, 1,
Oh,
2,
right,
3.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Ah! JavaScript just.
JavaScript has its charms too. I mean, the other thing about Python is that it's completely synchronous, unless you choose to make it asynchronous, which, for a back-end language is pretty appropriate. Asynchronicity is great on the front end. It's kind of a pain on the back end. Okay, let's work with dictionaries a little bit. Dictionaries are really useful, as you might imagine. So let's make animal counts, again, snake case. Let's see. So animal count, we'll say dog 1, monkey 4, duck 7. Okay, so now I have animal counts, and I can say for animal count in animal counts. All right, so actually, or dot items. Actually, let's do this for a minute. All right, so animal counts, I can do dot keys. None of this like object dot keys object Shinola. I can do dot values. And I can do dot items. And items gives me a list of what? What are those?
Key value pairs.
They are the key value pairs. Did somebody say what those actually are? Have people used Python before? They're tuples. Yeah, it's a list of tuples. Tuples are like lists, but they're immutable. They're ordered, but you can't change them. You can't add to them. You can't remove from them. They're like an immutable list. And tuples and lists can be unpacked in ways that are really fun. So if I want, let's say I have my fruits, apple, berry, cherry, and I can say A, B, C equals fruits.
Wow.
This is unpacking. So A is apple now, B is berry, and C is fruits. Or C is cherry, sorry.
Oh yeah, with Babel you can do that now.
So that's called unpacking. You can also unpack tuples. So if I say for animal counts in animal counts, it is going to unpack each of these tuples as it iterates. So the first iteration, animal is going to be duck, and 7 is going to be count. The second iteration is going to unpack so that animal is dog, and 1 will be count. So I can say print, I have, oh man, I've totally forgotten how to do string interpolation in Python. I have animal format. count animal. In Python 3, yeah, there's so I'm using Python 2 right now. There's some slicker string formatting that you can do in Python 3 that actually is like template literals in JavaScript, where you can do $ and then the variable name, but you can't do that in Python 2. So 1 point for JavaScript, 20 points so far for Python.
So, in Python 3, like $1, $2.
Not $1, $2, but actually $ and then what the variable is actually named. So you could do count, like you do in template literals where you do the backticks. Okay, so yeah, so here I was unpacking those tuples.
Now, if you didn't, when you unpacked and then you printed all 3 of the lines, can you like if you didn't print something right there, could you create 3 different variables or something and
Sure.
print the variables later?
Yeah, totally. Although, I mean, it's iterative, so you'd probably want to append onto something. Yeah, making variables inside a for loop is tricky business. Yeah, so, okay, what else do people want to see? Yeah, that was a loop. Yeah, Jeffrey.
The snake casing I heard you mention, that's specific key value pair?
No, any variable should be called, if you want to separate the words, you should use snake case and not camel case. That's just Python.
Okay, so animal and count are represented.
No. I could have called this A and B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Jeff?
How does it deal with JSON? Like a stringify and a parse?
Yeah, so I can import JSON. I don't think I have to pip install it. Yeah, I don't. It would have given me an error. So JSON is a standard module. So, and if I want to know what JSON has, I just do JSON dot, and this is an IPython thing. So I can do, I just hate the dump and dumps, but there you are. And so dump and dumps and load and loads are the ones that I've used the most. So dump means take a dictionary and make it into a JSON string, and load is take a JSON string and make it into a dictionary. Oh, right, and the dump will be if there's a file that you're reading from, and the dumps is if there's a string. So I can say, let's see. So let's do, so animal count JSON. So now it's a string. It's a JSON string. And if I want to make it back into a dictionary, let's see. But often you're reading from a file. So that's where the load and loads comes from, or the load and dump, as opposed to the loads and dumps.
What's the U?
The U. So because I didn't give it an encoding, it assumed Unicode. And so these are Unicode strings. They can be treated like strings, but they can also have Unicode characters in them. Python 3, all strings are Unicode, I think. I'm not positive about that. Yeah.
Is there something Python can do that JavaScript cannot?
So something Python can do that JavaScript cannot do.
The floats.
Yeah, okay, here's something. This is more of a party trick than anything else, but print, let's say the number, or let's say cat times 4. Oh, right. And I'm like, no, Python 2, you can do it without the parentheses. It's Python 3.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So just straight. Oh wow. No function needed. No nothing. It's like, hey, I want 4 cats.
So that star operator is like doing something more than like time.
Yeah.
It knows. Like.
It does a different thing if it's a string. And so actually, when I want to print, a line of asterisks, I'll do that, right? Or, right, and then, yeah, you don't have to actually print it out.
And you have like string integers like JavaScript. Like if you had like 1 but wrapped in quotes, would that evaluate it as a string like in JavaScript?
Like that? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Python. Okay. You have to do double equals. What do you think?
Nope.
Yeah.
Does it have like 2 equal sign versus 3 equal sign?
No 3 equal sign. It's always checking type in addition to value.
See, there's something.
No cohesion.
No, you can. I can say, like if I want, that'll give me the string 1. And if I do int of the string 4, that'll give me the number 4.
Is there a quote for that too?
If I, so here's something that trips people up at the beginning in Python, and I think Python 3 has changed. What is 5 divided by 3?
Oh, that's where you get your modulus in JavaScript, right?
Well, but I mean, just in general, if you did 5 divided by 3 in JavaScript, what would you get?
1.2?
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, it'd be 1.67, yeah. Python, if you give it 2 integers, it's going to give you an integer back.
Period. Flat out.
Python 3.
So if I give it an integer and a float,
It'll print out a float.
it'll give me a float back.
I noticed too, does it always round down? Or it always takes whatever the whole.
Yeah, it truncates it. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think like something that's a little bit more advanced, but not quite web frameworks. But do people have other questions? Otherwise, I might just go into web frameworks just for fun.
What is like a standard function?
Oh, right, function definitions. Great question. Okay, so to define a function, you do a def. And so for the function, well, all right, so I'm going to do def and then the function name, add 5. I give it a parameter. And I'm just going to call that num. As you might expect, this again, the syntax is white space significant. So add 5 to num, and I'm going to return num plus 5. It's a one-line function. So 8 equals add 5. What are you doing? Sorry. Yeah, you can redefine integers in Python. No, you can't. You can't. Okay. So if I do add 5 of 7, I get 12. What do you think?
7. Oh, I was gonna say 7 5 times.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it says, maybe it's like the multiplier. Maybe it will append 5 onto the string 7.
Sorry, you can't concatenate string and int objects. Okay, so I can do things like if I want to account for that, I can say try num return return num plus 5. By the way, this is standard in Python. It looks weird to me now because I've been doing JavaScript for so long, but to have 4 spaces for your tabs, not 2. Return num plus 5, and then accept, and then I think, oh man, this is bad. I'm totally losing it. I think you can, that's how you designate what the exception is. And then I can, I just don't remember. I'm just going to print nice try. But you can get information out of that exception. I just don't remember the syntax right now. So,
and if you had multi-line functions, they would all have to be on the same level of indentation.
Multi-line functions.
So like
yes.
That try-catch,
yeah. So
one line,
let's do some different stuff now. So I'm going to import random. That's something that I can import. And if I want to know what random is, I can do this random dot. If you are not in IPython, you can also always do dir. And I actually have not found an equivalent in Node for dir. Dir tells you what you get. And I can even do dir on a list. Remember my animals list? And it'll tell you what you can do with that animals list. Yeah, so yeah, I like dir a lot, and I have not found an equivalent in Node. Sad. But we can do random dot. Okay, and so I can do random. Most of these are very mathy. What I really want is, there are 2 things that you do with random. You do random choice, and you give it a list. And you do random dot, the other one is random dot int. Is that right? No, not normal variate. Wow, this is bad that I don't remember how to get a random number. Okay, random randant. There we go. And this will give you. Okay, how do you use randant? You go with the help function. Okay. So return a random integer in the range A and B, including both endpoints. Oh, you're so great, Python. Okay. And that self, by the way, is just the random. Is just the random module coming before. Self is kind of the equivalent of this when it comes to object orientation. When it comes to object instances. Self is kind of the equivalent of, it's pretty much the equivalent of this for when you're talking about class instances. Okay, so random.randant 7, 12. Okay, there's 12. And do whatever. There's something else. Oh, the place that help came from is actually the doc string for randant. So I'd like to talk about doc strings for a minute. So let's make another function. Def add 8 num. Every function should have a doc string. This is the standard way of documenting Python. And JSDoc is sort of similar in JavaScript, and so I've been trying to use JSDoc. But the first line, okay, And triple quotes means I can make a multi-line string, even though I'm only making this one line. It's standard to do doc strings and triple quotes. And I can be like, and I can actually give an example. And this is a doc test. So, and you can do these in JSDoc too. You can do the examples. So I give it 3 carets just to indicate that I'm about to give you a doc test. And then I say add 8 of 4 should return 12. That's a doc test. And there are modules that you can use to run all of those doc tests, and it'll give you, if they fail, it'll give you some sort of message. JSDoc can do this too. But one of the reasons it really is documenting the function, right? You're like, oh, what would, this is a good way of like showing you what actual real cases of the function would look like, how to use the function. I sometimes, my doc strings can be really, really long. Python is all about documentation. Okay, so now I can return num plus 8. And now if I do help on add 8, look at that. It gives me the doc string. So in order to get this, I did help on add 8. So doc string is sort of built-in documentation. Okay, so we were going to do a longer function. So let's do return your, let's do def lucky. Or is lucky. Again, snake case. And we'll take a number. And the first thing we'll do is we will get a random number. So let's do, the lucky num equals random.randint, and we'll go from 0 to 100. And I'm just going to return lucky num is equal to num. Return true if the number is the same as what we passed in, and false if it's not. So that's this. This somebody asked for a multi-line function. Yeah, so notice those are both the same indentation. This is never, I like statistically I should have to do this 100 times before 4 is lucky. So. You're trying it. We can do a better is lucky. Exactly. Okay. All right. So. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I guess the one control structure I haven't talked about is while loops, but they're pretty similar. They're pretty much the way you'd expect. While, so we can say I equals 5, while I is less than 20, print I, and then we can do something else here. We can say if I is equal to 16. This is a really weird while loop, but I can say break. I can say like if there's some condition, I can break my while loop. You can break for loops also, or I can also say if I is 16, continue, meaning, and that's actually so now it is going to not bother doing the rest of the loop. if I is 16.
So continue is like a break, but only on that one.
A break, but only for that one iteration. Uh-oh. What did I forget? To increment I. Did you see that coming and you just wanted to watch those 5 scroll down the screen? Okay, yeah, so how are we going to deal with that if we want to print the I? Because otherwise we're just going to get stuck on 16. So I think we're going to have to, what is the best, well, I mean, really the best way to do this would be if I is not 16. There is no plus plus in Python. Okay, so another thing that you can do in Python is this range. So here's this, it's just a function called range. It gives you a list from 0 to 1 before whatever you did the range. So, and actually I want to do a little list slicing too. So if we do, nums equals range 10. Okay, so nums is just a list now from 0 to 9. Python has this really elegant syntax for list slicing. I can do nums up unto but not including the 3rd index. I can do starting at 1 up unto but not including the 3rd index. I can do starting at the 3rd index until the end. This really, really nice list slicing syntax. Okay. Okay. All right, let's start to make a web app. And seeing grins. I've been seeing slightly bored faces, and there are definitely signs of life there. Okay, so I haven't made a Flask app in several months, so I might need to refer to some documentation. The Flask documentation is actually quite good. So you know you're there if you get this weird horn Flask thing. Okay. This at is a decorator. Decorators are ways of modifying functions. Okay, so here is our first Flask. Apparently Flask is fun. So here is our first Flask app. So I am going to just copy this all in, and I'll actually get out of the REPL. And let's make, that was my little pony stuff. Touch my, files get .py extensions. Flask.py is a terrible name. Okay, so here, this is a dunder variable. There are special dunder variables, and this gives you the name of the program that's running. So in this case, it's web app. And okay, so now we have this app route, The route should be familiar to people who have used Express. So I'm just saying a slash. And then this is called the view function. So we're declaring a function here. Bad us, we did not give a docstring. So let's do that. And this will just return the string hello world back to the browser when somebody requests this route. Now, Flask is not running. Yeah. The 3 quotations in a row is for a multi-line string. Even though this docstring is not a multi-line string, because docstrings often are, it's just it's convention to put docstrings in a multi-line string. Other questions? Yeah, Patrick.
So you mentioned something about the @ symbol or at app.route, and you said so that's how you add methods to a function, or is that?
No, it's basically it's a decorator. So basically, app is an instance of a Flask app. I'm instantiating a Flask app, and its name is whatever the name of this file is. That app has a method called route, and that app route method can be used as a decorator. And basically all this decorator does is it associates this view function with this route.
It's like a modifier.
It's kind of a modifier of the function. Decorators are a big topic, somewhat advanced, and I can talk about them in a future session. Yeah.
Can you have line 4, which is the decorator function definition, and another function definition, like many?
No, the decorator it's decorating the function declaration that immediately follows it. Nothing else.
So even if you had like a space, this would stop working between them?
I'm not positive about that. I think probably it would, but we can test that. Yeah.
You don't have to.
It'd be bad style.
You don't have to indent def. Sure.
No, def is not indented. It's only the function itself, the contents of the function. Basically, think of your indentations as like what comes in between curly braces.
So you don't have to indent def underneath routes because it's not.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's nothing curly brace here. This is it's a decorator. I probably should have done some other well, whatever. Okay, so now, fine. So now we have hello world, and let's go and, but the problem is my app isn't running, so I have to make sure that I run my app. Yes, probably. So I run a Python file by saying Python, just like you would say node. Okay, so notice, so the default port is 5,000 instead of 3,000. Okay, so there's hello world.
Did you install Flask?
I did. I did a pip install. That was at the beginning. So I can stop this by doing a Control-C. And if I do a pip freeze, that tells me what's installed. And so I've got a bunch of things installed because I installed IPython, which had a bunch of dependencies. And now I have Flask, and Flask has its own dependencies as well.
And then it logged out some up there.
It did. It printed that I got the route slash. I did a get on the route slash, and then I also tried to get the fave icon, but I don't have one. So
That's built in Flask.
yeah, yeah.
Notice too, you didn't have to strictly define the port in app.run. You just called app.run.
No.
And it picked the default port.
Yeah, I think Express defaults to 3,000 if you don't give it a port, but I might be wrong about that.
question.
Yeah.
In your, where it said app run, can you do like in like Node how we have listen and then usually have to give it a port and then a callback, or sometimes you can do a callback with it printing out like a message saying, letting you know that it's running.
Yeah, so you definitely can do port equals, is that right? No, I think it's lowercase. So if I want to have two Flask servers running on the same thing, I could do this. No. Okay, so now it's running on 5005. When you are a Python programmer, I want you to remove the word callback from your vocabulary. Python does not use callbacks.
That is
Python is a synchronous programming language. You can make it async if you use like Tornado, or there are other async libraries you can use, but Python is a synchronous language. You have to try to make it async, as opposed to JavaScript, where you have to try to make it synchronous.
So right where you have your app run, you don't have to say, hey, let me know I'm running on this server. You literally just put it, and it'll tell you, hey, I'm running on this server.
Yeah, Flask just gives you this.
So it gives you
But
the
yeah.
message. Okay. I like that message just so I know.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
speaking of, there's a good one. Does Python use something like NodeMon, where if you're making an adjustment to your app,
So the question was, does Python use something like NodeMon? So if things change, it'll update it. Flask does that automatically. No, it doesn't do it automatically unless you're in developer mode. All right, how do we get Flask in developer mode? I used to know this stuff. All right. Debug. The Flask debug is so cool. Okay, so love this stuff. Okay. I actually haven't worked with Express a lot, but I really do love Flask. So I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to do it with an environment variable. I want to do it, let's just try debug equals true. Remember, true is capitalized. Okay, yeah, so the debugger is active. So now if I change this to it restarted. So that's how you do it's sort of the equivalent, but yeah, so now if I refresh here. Oh, the site can't be reached. Oh, because I changed it to 5,000. 5,005, yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. So this was just an introduction. Next week, I will think of more of a project that we can just work together. We'll do like a simple web app, and we'll do some like templating and just some fun things like that. And then, so next week, let's say we'll do a simple web app. The week after, I really want to talk about SQL Alchemy, which is an object relational mapper. And you will just, I don't know. I think it's a lot better than the JavaScript ORMs, and you can do it's really powerful. You can do just really cool things with it that you can't do with an ORM. Oh, and I have not been paying attention to chat, so sorry, people. Are there pointers in Python? Are there pointers in Python? No. Python doesn't have pointers. Python, the way memory works in Python is that the variable is referencing a place in memory. So Python doesn't have explicit pointers. Sorry, Jen, you probably asked that like half an hour ago. Okay. Yeah. So so next week we'll do Flask and Jinja. The week after we'll probably do SQL, like classes and SQL alchemy, and then I'm open for what we might want to do. The last session.
TensorFlow.
Tensor. No.
All the way there.